Many people who regularly use porn insist that it's no big deal, and they believe that they can quit any time. Well, at least until they actually try to quit. Even when we sincerely say that we really want to get away from this, there are patterns happening all around us and inside us that can take on a life of their own. While our mouth might be saying, "I want out," momentum in our brain, our body, our heart, and our lifestyle may all work in the reverse direction. As a result, it can sometimes start to feel like we're trying to swim upstream against strong currents of a river. If you were in a river, though, and realized the forces you were facing, you could decide to just step out on the shore or find a boat that could help you move through the river in a direction that you wanted to go, instead of just getting dragged along by the current. The same things apply with internal forces sometimes sweeping us downstream. As we become more aware of inner cycles and currents, we'll be in a better place to step out of them and to begin building new practices and habits that can unleash a momentum of their own and move us in a direction that we really want to go. So what are some of these internal forces or cycles that can drag us downstream? Take yourself back for a moment to the most recent time you struggled with this stuff. What was happening in the moments right before? Obviously, all sorts of different kinds of thoughts, feelings, and circumstances can come before using. Sometimes people may be feeling curious or bored or nothing unusual at all. Other times, due to the hormones throughout the body, an anticipation or interest in arousal can arise for any of us in this sexualized atmosphere around us. That craving is one obvious place where the addiction cycle often begins. And as we've said before, an interest in sex is normal, and it's not something that we need to fear or fight against. I mean, this interest is obviously something that can be powerful in drawing you close to the love of your life. It's important to point out that it's not simply sexual arousal that motivates people to turn toward porn and other unwanted sexual behaviors. It's also very common that people are seeking relief from different kinds of discomforts, such as feelings of anxiety, depression, emptiness, and loneliness. When any of us are feeling off in some way, it's understandable that we seek relief, some way to feel better or to not feel so bad. That can be a good thing with all sorts of healthy, positive things that we can do to relieve pain when we're hurting. But what happens when we decide that we must get rid of the discomfort that we're facing at all costs? In that moment, if that's how we respond to discomfort in our lives, it's no surprise that we're going to start looking for something, anything, to push away what we're currently feeling. Whether it's a strong craving or a strong desire to avoid the discomforts of life, either one can and will and does quickly drag us into that river, to the point that we are soon entertaining the idea of using, which is another early step in the addiction cycle. For many people, this kind of craving for stimulation or desire to escape discomfort is a big reason that they drink, smoke, do drugs, or use porn. In fact, researchers have found that trying to escape from discomfort lies at the heart of most recurring addictive or compulsive behavior. Although the science is clear about the reality of compulsive problems with pornography, people talk about that pattern in different ways, and that's okay. Whether you consider yourself to have an addiction, a compulsive problem, or just a bad habit, these same patterns apply. Whatever level of problem you face, and whatever language you use to describe it, the point is simply to find more ways to be aware of what's actually happening in your situation, and what steps you personally need to take to move in the direction you really want for your life. It's hard to know what steps to take, however, if we're only hardly aware of what we're facing. We end up on autopilot out on the river, without anyone at the helm or steering the boat. Even though we fall repeatedly into the same patterns of thinking, feeling, or experiencing, we're hardly paying attention to what's really going on. Have you ever found yourself going through the motions of the struggle without being fully conscious of what's happening? When we're in autopilot mode, we often fall, robot-like, into vulnerable situations. For drug users, this could mean winding up under the bridge downtown where the dealers slum around, or hanging out with a user friend from their past. With pornography, this could be getting on the internet with no one around and locking the door. It could be wandering around the magazine aisle in the bookstore, secretly hoping to catch a little glimpse of something sexual. It's putting yourself in an environment in which you normally get exposed to pornography or triggers that will draw you in. We call this moving toward using or starting the ritual. Can you start to see yourself in this cycle at all? Once you recognize what's happening, you'll be in a good place to learn how to step out of the cycle. Research shows that even anticipation of using a drug can start to trigger a brain reaction. At this point, anticipation builds. Our focus narrows. And if we keep moving forward, resisting the urge to use seems almost impossible. So, we do it. And like another cigarette, another drink, or another food binge, the porn use triggers different changes in the body and mind. This is the ironic part of the cycle. When we turn to any drug as the primary solution to dealing with stress or discomfort, the drug itself can actually become the cause of stress rather than the relief from it. In fact, we can become so anxious about not feeling that discomfort that we don't think much at all about the reality that we'll be experiencing harmful effects later on. As the cycle goes, we can begin to use even more and more to escape increasing amounts of pain and discomfort. And the next time those difficult feelings surface again, the thought comes, why do I need to be feeling this way when I can feel something else right now? Even with our anxiety or emptiness or depression growing deeper with more porn use, we sometimes use more and more as if that was somehow going to give us what we need. Pretty soon we're swept away and feeling helpless in the face of an emotional cancer that seems to be multiplying out of control. There's a lot that we'll say in other videos about how we can beat this emotional cancer for good. But for now, let's recap with a little example. Imagine you find yourself home alone for a few hours, so you decide to start working on some projects. One task turns out to be especially challenging, and you start to get a little frustrated or anxious. At this point, you have a choice, although you may not realize it. Is it okay to feel some anxiety, or do I have to try to make it go away right now? Your reaction is almost automatic. I don't want to feel this. I've got to break away and find some relief. Rather than being okay with a little anxiety and continuing your project, you've just taken your first step into the cycle. With no one else around, you realize that you could explore websites that you normally wouldn't if others were around. At first, you resist. But the idea keeps coming back, and pretty soon, you start to rationalize. Well, I won't look at anything really bad. So you check again to make sure that you're still alone, and before you know it, you've used again. After that, you feel empty, disappointed, or maybe even embarrassed. You think to yourself, how on earth did I let that happen? Did you notice the other steps of the cycle that we discussed? After taking that first step, it went boom, 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 entertaining the idea of using, moving toward using, then experiencing the harmful effects and discomfort getting worse. As you become more aware of the power of these forces, the good news is that you can do something about them. For instance, you can begin noticing places where you can step out and move in another direction, something called choice points that we explore in another video. Hopefully, this discussion will help remind you that you are not your problem. With all the other stuff going on, clearly, this is not just about you. This is about the cycle, the river. Even if it takes you a while to figure things out, at least you know this. You don't have to get dragged downstream forever.